Good morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock in the morning, so I guess it's time to do some work. And here's the latest project. This is a Pioneer CT-A7 classic tape deck built from 83 till 85. Robust unit with a closed loop double capstan setup. Not direct driven, it's a motor drive. It has 3 heads with tape monitoring. It has a fixed bias, which means you do not get facilities to change tape bias or record level based on the tape itself. Supposedly this has had new belts, but it has problems. So that's why it was sent to me by a friend for it to be serviced a little bit. He purchased this deck off of someone in an internet forum and just wants to have it looked at. And the first thing I can say is that I am absolutely in love with this BU meter. It's really cool. Unfortunately, you can't really see it on video, but this is green and not turquoise or anything. The drive functions, they work pretty much, but it has trouble getting the tape back in after you eject it. Fast forward and rewind all pretty much work just fine, and ejects a little slow. But what this does is it detects if you insert a cassette. That's pretty cool. But it does have its fair share of problems, which we need to look at, which I'm going to explain here in a second. For a first test, I tried recording on a standard TDK-SA cassette, and I listened to it back with the tape monitor, and I can already guess that somebody had a hand in messing about with the controls on the inside, the adjustments for record and playback level and bias and such, because the difference between tape and source in the monitor is quite appalling, because it seems to be A, severely underbiased, and B, the record or playback level, I haven't figured it out yet which one, is severely off. Listen to this.
But it's strictly rhythm, he doesn't want to make it cry or sing. If any old guitar is all he can afford, when he gets up under the lights to play his thing.
Well, this is the inside of the machine. Absolutely great as far as servicing goes. Well, I guess the mess of cables here isn't. Could tie those together and make it a bit neater perhaps. But anyway, yeah, this belt was not replaced professionally. The goop from the perished belts from before is all over the place. You can see it over here, and you can also see it on the wheel here and on the cables here. It's absolutely disgusting. I'm gonna have to fix that. But yeah, you can get to the adjustment pots here very easily, which is great. One thing I don't like is that apparently, if this is any indication, that's a 4066 CMOS switch IC, and that means that the tape monitor is switched using that, which is not ideal for sound quality, but meh. What a mess. I got it all apart now, and this is one of the flywheels, and you can see it's full of goop, and my hands are completely dirty from all the residue from the perished belts that were on before. Now this one isn't so bad, but I still gotta clear them up. Caps and flywheels here all nice and shiny again. No more residue, but it did take quite a lot of, gooping off. Very, very unpleasant stuff. But this is all okay, and I'm working on this mechanism now, which, yeah, this wasn't done properly. This is as good as I was able to clean up that wheel. It should be okay now, but the problem is, the way it was before was totally unacceptable. It was full of sticky residue from the old perished belts. And that is a problem, because as it's gonna stick, of course that creates more friction, and that makes it harder for this motor to drive that mechanism, and of course it's gonna fail once in a while. Alright, I have everything in place belt-wise, but there's a mechanism here for ejecting the tape that's operated with a couple of cam gears and stuff. And these have to be aligned because there's a couple of pins here that rise and lower as the mechanism is supposed to go out. And this has to be timed. Also notice the distinct lack of lubrication on this. Might have been another issue that this machine has in operating that mechanism. This mechanism has to be correctly timed and aligned so this so the mechanism doesn't get confused and does weird things. And this gear has a little hole to help with timing, and this also has a little bit of a slot in it. To do this, first of all, you have to eject the mechanism manually by pushing this upwards. And then you see a slot here, that little dark spot here, that little slot. If you look at it horizontally, it has to line up with this little bridge here in the plastic. It has to line up. So that should probably be about right. Next up, I'm gonna do this again later, but with some better lubrication. But I just want to demonstrate this here for a second. You insert this one, that the hole in the gear lines up with where the pulley is gonna be. So that's right about here. The hole needs to be right here. While you're inserting it, you have to push this lever down so that it fits inside. Alright, it's nicely lined up now. The slot on the right aligns and the hole on the left aligns. And now we can insert this mechanism in there. Make sure that the potentiometer to the mode switch, I guess, it aligns as well with this little hole here, and we're good to go. This seems to be very reliable so far. Right, I got the drive out again after the successful test. And what I want to do here is, apart from cleaning the heads and cleaning the tape, cleaning the components in the tape path, I would like to service these pinch rollers a little bit, because they're hardened on the outside and they get little rough spots on them and brittle spots. I'll try to show it on camera, but they just have to be roughened up a little bit. And they also tend to bulge outwards, which has to be counteracted in order to guarantee fixed travel for the tape path. Right, here you can see the problem. It's bulged outwards and it's really brittle on the surface, and just roughening it up slightly is gonna fix that problem. This is the supply side, and this is the take-up side. Doesn't look much better, does it? I have here a Dremel tool, and what I'm gonna do is put it on the lowest speed. Put it on the lowest speed, hold the pinch roller against it, and at the same time go over it with some very fine sandpaper. Right, it's a lot better, but you can definitely see that the rubber is still a bit brittle, simply because I think this is a EOL. This is gonna work for a couple of years, maybe 5, maybe 10. At some point this is probably gonna have to be replaced. I'm gonna do some fine tuning on it because it's not exactly even yet. And the other one, I think this is gonna be good for a couple of years. Right, so I have removed the head assembly because I cannot do adjustments here because this whole thing is hardened up. The head wouldn't move up and down, and there was a couple of issues here and there. And as you can see, this rod here has completely hardened crud all over it, like the rest of the drive. I'm still, for now, that is my biggest concern, because everything here is hardened and the thing wouldn't move, the spring wouldn't move the head assembly up and down. And we can move it now. Alright, I got everything back together so far. Wasn't actually too hard once I figured this out. And I gave it a good re-grease on all the moving parts and whatever. And it's time to calibrate the machine. Now I gotta realign the head height, which means how far in the head actually sits, or the head assembly. visually by inspecting the tape path. Now this is a makeshift solution. Normally, if I was doing this professionally, I would have a mirror cassette where this would be a mirror and I could inspect the tape path. This is just a makeshift solution, of course, but what you do is you make sure that in between the two pegs on the head there is no creasing of the tape. So I just adjust that slightly and I'm gonna push it in till there's no creasing left. There we go. And I think we're good. With this test tape, we can set up pretty much everything. We can set up azimuth, level if we do a couple of conversions from this to whatever the nano Weber per meter the test tape specified for this machine uses. But since we know the frequencies, we can also adjust speed. This alternates between 12.5 kilohertz for the azimuth and 315 hertz for the level. Azimuth is adjusted using this screw. And that's pretty much as good as it gets, really. That's pretty damn good, actually. And over here we can see that the speed is a little bit on the low side. 12.48 and 314 point something. So I'm just gonna adjust that really quickly with the use of a really small screwdriver that you stick in the back of the motor. Yeah, it seems to be as close as I can get it. Nice. Something that I do not like about this deck is that it has adjustments for type 1 bias, right side, left side, and type 2 bias, right side, left side, but no adjustment for metal bias. The metal bias is actually generated from the type 1 bias, which I do not like really. So that's the bias adjustment pots. What we have here is record level left and right, and over here playback level left side, playback equalizer left side, playback level right side, and playback equalizer right side. Here's the balance for the DC amplifiers, right side, left side, and the meter adjustments are over here. So actually setting the playback level based on this tape is a little bit tricky. This tape, as far as I know, is recorded using 200 nanowebers per meter, but this service manual of this tape deck specifies a calibration tape that was recorded using 150 nanowebers per meter. So that's a difference of 4 decibels, which means that the point of 0 dB relative to this tape is 4 decibels offset. So let's try and figure out how we actually need to adjust our playback level. So we have a reference level of minus 7.7 dB V according to the service manual, which corresponds to 0 decibels of this test tape specified. 315 Hertz 0 dB, minus 7.7 dB V, or 412 millivolts RMS. So we add an offset of plus 4. And then we subtract minus 24 because our test tape has amplitude of minus 24 decibels. And we end up with minus 27.7 decibels, which corresponds to how much? Minus 27.7, which corresponds to 41.2 millivolts RMS or thereabouts. And we can see it is actually pretty close already. As you can see, it's pretty accurate right there. And for the playback equalizer adjustment, playback level for 10 kilohertz, or in our case 12.5 since we don't have anything else, needs to be plus 0.5 dB higher than the 350 hertz playback level. I think we can do that. The owner of this machine has asked me to align this deck to TDK-D for type 1 and TDK-SA for type 2. Vintage types, of course, because we all use new old stock tapes if we do any recording. And here's how I do that. Over here I have my phone, which is running a little app, not at the moment because there you go, it's running an app called Function Generator. and it does what it says on the box. It's by Soft. And I have 2 channels set up. On channel 1 I have a low frequency for setting up the record level, and on channel 2 I have a high frequency for setting up the bias. Then toggle on individual channels, and I can toggle between the 2 channels. Right, I got the right channel up here. This is source and this is tape. We gotta adjust that a little bit. Now unfortunately I only have 2 hands, and it's kinda hard to do with just one, so I can't show you how I do that at the moment, so you're just gonna have to take my word for it. Oh yeah, and swapping to the biasing, I'd say that looks about right. Now obviously, since this is tape, you're gonna get a lot of variance in the amplitude, so considering the lowest point of each, this would be a decent measurement.
Repent for what I've done. You tell me what is certain, but I'll tell you what's true. You tell me what is honesty, when all around the mistake and cruelty.
Right, as you could hear, that sounds absolutely fantastic. Did you hear that clear S sound? Oh, that made me ting a little bit. Anyway, it's time to bring this project to a closure. I'm gonna get some zip ties and tie these cables up, like, for crying out loud. I'm gonna screw this all back together, and then we're gonna get this unit to its new owner, and hopefully he'll have a lot of fun with it. Right, there's one thing I still need to do before I can put this back together. I need to glue this button back on here, because it was so brittle that it actually just fell off while I removed the drive. So, yeah. I got my hot air set up for that, and I'm gonna just glue it on there. And that's that. That's nice and firm. So I think we're about done with this. Let's give it a final spin.
So I'm sorry if I ever resisted. I never had a doubt you ever existed. I only have a problem when people insist on taking their hate, placing it on your name. So to say a troubled boy, just because you like to destroy. You are the word is destroy.